Hey guys, I'm going to tell you a story. This is a really interesting story. This happened to me. It was an experience told to me by someone. But let's talk about the Roswell crash, okay? Oh, let's see, what year was this? Basically, I have a friend. He's much older than me. He may be passed away by now. He would be in his 90s. Let's see, in 47, if he was, say, 20, gosh, he's got to be in his late 80s, 90s by now. He was a pretty healthy guy. Anyway, let me tell you the story. So, I'm at church one night on a weeknight. I think it was Wednesday night. That's when we had our youth activities. And I was the young men's president in a Mormon church ward in South New Jersey. Somewhere between Philadelphia and Atlantic City was all of our congregation spread. And my bishop at the time was a black man. And he was actually, if you look it up, I'll give you some blind items here. He was the first black bishop of the LDS Church. In the 70s, there was a proclamation that the blacks were available to get the priesthood now, and then this guy was the first bishop. And I had just moved out there after getting my master's and was working in the vaccine industry. And my congregation I went to, my bishop was this guy. Actually, his first name was Timothy. I'll give you his initials. TJC. Okay. He's a black man. He had a karate dojo at the time. He was semi-retiring, but he worked for a company that manages waste. And he was an engineer and a tester, analyzer of products. But in 1947, in July, I think it was around the 9th or 10th of July, he was called. He was in the Army Air Force. He was in the Roswell Army Air Force, the RAAF. He was in the 509th Division, and they were mainly a bomber division that was experimenting with explosions in the desert. He was an MP. He's about 6'2", large man, large stature, and evidently, I guess he always knew how to defend himself and fight, and became a karate instructor. But in the military, he was an MP. So basically, he said what the Roswell crash was about was, according to what he was told by his colonel, I think his name was Wild Bill Williams something or other, it was a Hollywood movie prop crash that they had to go clean up. That's what they were told. Now, this part of the story has not been told by anybody, but he told me the story in like January, February of 1992. And as corroboration for my story, you can ask my ex-wife if she'll support me and say, do you remember when I came home from church one night from a youth activity and I told you what the bishop told me? Like, he cleaned up this spaceship crash and saw these dead aliens and everything. And she's like, wow, what do you think? I was like, I don't know, man. But I had already heard of it. My mother told me about the crash. So let me tell you the story. We're at the church. The boys are playing basketball. We're in the hallway. There's me and one of the counselors in the bishopric, a guy named Cecil. And we're just leaning back against the wall. We're all just waiting for them to finish playing the game, and so we can all herd up the kids and drive them home, do our ride share, and just get home. It's a weeknight. And so we're sitting there, and Bishop, he goes, hey, man, he goes, do you ever hear about that UFO crash in Roswell, New Mexico? And I said, I have, actually. I said, my mother told me about that. She had a book, I think, by, my mother had Corso's book. That was on our bookshelf when I was a kid. I read that stuff, and my mom talked about it. So he said, yeah, I was there. I said, really? What happened? He said, well, it was a down day. They weren't doing anything. They were at the base, the military base in Roswell. Most of the guys were on their bunks. They were in a big Quonset hut. The guys were in their bunks, and they were playing cards, and a lot of them, he said, were writing letters home to family. It was a time to write letters. It must have been like their arrest day. It wasn't an active duty day. So they were doing their thing. He said then their commander came in. I don't know if he was NCO or a commissioned officer. I think he was a colonel, so he would have been an officer. Bill came in and said, "All right, guys, I need everybody to suit up. We have to go do something." He said, "We're going to go clean up a crash site." And I'm paraphrasing. He said he came in and sold them on this idea. They were going to go clean up a crash site. And near the base, they were going to get on the truck and haul them out into the desert, and they had to clean up a movie prop that had crashed from a sci-fi movie production. And the Hollywood producers had asked the Army to help them clean up the crash, of course, you know. It's like, hey, you're the Army, you got all the equipment, just help us clean it up. Sure. So they went out, and they got on the, he said they suited up, they got on these trucks, these flatbed trucks, and they went out. He said it was about, I think, almost 2 hours on the highway somewhere. They pulled off, and they went across this land. He said it was a desert, you know, it was really flat. There was mountain range off in the distance. He said right as they pulled up, he literally described as they pulled up, they came around turning right, this right, and then they stopped. He said off the left side of the truck, you were on a ridge, and you could see down, and in this shallow embankment, like a shallow cliff, there was this, what looked like a craft, like a flying saucer spacecraft. He said it was actually oblong. It wasn't perfectly round. But it had crashed into the wall there in these rocks, shallow cliff. And he said there was a ladder leaning against it. And he said there was kind of like an opening or doorway. And he said there were these two dead men laying on this blanket. And they were, so he walked right up. He was the MP, okay? So he had some command on this, on the job site. So he just walked right up to him and just stood there and looked at him. And he said what he saw just, it blew his mind. You know, he was going through cognitive dissonance. You know, everything you've been taught is wrong. And he said they had 4 fingers. And he said they had these shimmery, silvery outfits on. And he said they, he said there were 2 of them laying on this blanket, and they were dead. They weren't moving. But he said they looked different. He said their faces were shrunken, but their eyes were big. And their bodies just didn't look right. But he thought, you know, jet technology had just come out, and he didn't know anything about compressed air cabins and gas used. So he thought, you know, maybe somehow these guys had been pickled by this gas compression or something. He's trying, his mind is going through cognitive dissonance. He's trying to figure out what he's looking at. So he's thinking, yeah, these must have been stunt pilots that were affected by some kind of gas compression that really messed up their bodies, and they don't look right. But he counted 4 fingers, so he knew they had 4 fingers, and he kept telling himself these guys were really screwed up by gas compression in a cabin. But he said they had dark cheeks, and one of them had, he said it just had really dark cheeks, and he couldn't tell if that was its natural skin color or if it was burnt. He said it kind of looked burnt and bubbly, but he didn't know if that's what they looked like or if that's what the effect was from the crash. So he said he was told after about 10 minutes of studying these little guys, he was told to turn away and go to the perimeter of the work area and face at parade rest out to the horizon and watch for any oncoming approachers or any vehicles or any threats, you know, and report. So he was asked to step away from the aliens and do a job. But he said later he also was picking up debris, and he walked through the fields in the desert, and he picked up, he said, this shiny material we've heard about that would, he said it would crumple up, but it would pop back. He said it was kind of like an acetone sheet with a reflective surface, and you could wrinkle it, but it would pop back. And he talked about the sticks they found, like these little alloy I-beams that had, he said, like Egyptian hieroglyphics on them. And now as the guy's telling me this stuff, I'm just like, wow. I don't know whether to believe him or not, but my mother's told me the same thing because she knows about the crash in Roswell. This was before the internet, really. I mean, this was in 92 in January, February. I think I got like AOL 1.0 with the 1200 baud modem later that year. So anyway, I'm looking later on, you know, this is like in 2004. You know, I just posted my previous video was about Eisenhower meeting with these aliens, and that picture that I put on the thumbnail for the previous video is pretty accurate, because I think it looks like this alien I'm showing you here with the burnt cheeks, the bubbled up face. This is what my bishop told me. He said he's looking at this guy, and he said his face looked like it was all burnt, but he couldn't tell. Now this is probably a picture taken days later after my friend saw it at the crash site. So when I found this picture, like in 2003, 2004, just in Google Images, and I looked, you see a lot of different alien people. The alien autopsy I don't think is real. That face is too human looking. In fact, they've got that alien autopsy body on this drawing I'm showing you, where he said, let me show you real quick. No, not that one. Where he said, if you can see my mouse, he said the blanket was right here. From what he described to me, the blanket would have been here. This body seems to be inserted in this image, but this is exactly what he described. He gave the same angle with his hand, and basically he said the ladder was here and there was an opening. So this is pretty close to what he saw as he got off the truck. That was his first impression of the crash site. And here's the alien he told me about in early 1992 that had a bubbled up dark face. It looked like it had been burnt. When I saw this picture, I almost fainted in my chair at my computer. I was like, oh my gosh, that's like the image of what he told me in my mind that I made up. When I found that picture, I just went, oh, it's right there. Oh no. So that's the story. He was an MP, first black bishop of the LDS Church, lives in New Jersey, or lived in New Jersey. Initials are TJC. His first name is Timothy. He described to me the Roswell crash before. Gosh, that would have been what? Like, if he told me that in 92, and I found, like 12 years later, I found this image. It's just incredible. So anyway, I thought I would share with you my personal story. That the angle that this was a Hollywood movie crash has never been said. He also said when the day the Earth stood still, that movie came out, he said it freaked him out because the actor's costume was a silver suit with kind of a V-neck, and he said that was really identical or similar to what those aliens were wearing that he saw. They must have disrobed them for this picture. But he was watching that movie a few years after the military with his new wife, and he said he was just shocked and horrified. Can you imagine this guy was just spilling his beans to me, some youth leader at his congregation, years later, and it's still on his mind, and he's trying to figure it out. I feel sorry for the man, but, he was a special individual to be able to see that and bear witness to it, and he told me about it, and then I find these pictures. Now, if you look at the face of this one, it looks like the photo that's with Dwight Eisenhower in the previous video. So that's why I consider these to be the most correct. Probably exactly what you're looking at with the loaf of bread shaped head in the back. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So until I post another video, y'all have a good day. Subscribe, hit like, ring the bell. Goodbye.